Bushiroad is speeding up the reveals for Touken Ranbu as we're nearing the end of all the reveals, because we've got a lot of new cards to talk about. Stand up! Vanguard! I know not a lot of people are too excited about these reveals, as most of the cards are kind of generic or whatever, and it is a trend that will still stay with this video as well, but we do have some interesting card reveals and probably the strongest right line revealed to us as of yet. And we've got more cards for the trial deck that finally gives us more glimpse of the previous revealed archetypes or support waves, so we have a better understanding of what their power level can potentially be. So without further ado, let's jump straight into these cards, because surprisingly we've got a lot to talk about. We got two new right lines, we got trial deck supports, and a couple of cards of day reveals that total out at, I believe, 15 new cards for Touken Ranbu that we've got in like 2 days. So yeah, Bushiroad is starting to speed up these reveals as they want to get this set over with and immediately head into set 2, because they already start to reveal set 2 reveals, but more on that later. But let's first start off with the trial deck support, and we start with this grade 1, Fudou Yukimitsu, and this has the ability act on rework circle once a turn, cost +1, look at the top card of your deck, return it back to the top or bottom of your deck. If you return it to the bottom, this unit gets power +2k during this turn. So this is another way to manipulate the top deck, which we saw in the starter deck as well. And this is good generic support, which allows you to have more consistent access to either triggers or the cards that you want. And it can potentially be a 10k booster. So overall, it's a nice general supporter. But on top of nice generic support cards, we also got this grade 2, Heshikiri Hasebe, which has the ability, although when this unit is placed on a rework circle, look at 2 cards from the top of your deck, return them back in the top of your deck in any order. So this is another way to manipulate the top deck, only now it doesn't cost you anything and you can check the top 2. Yes, you cannot put things to the bottom of your deck, so you're still stuck with those 2, but in the early game you only have 1 drive check, so that will matter. And if you have skills that allow you to draw a card, you can then have more consistent ways to know what you're going to draw and what you're going to leave for your drive check. So there's still merit to this skill and might be a nice tech choice for whatever build you might play. Now for the final card that we've got for the trial deck is the backup grade 3, which is Ishikirimaru, and Ishikirimaru has the ability continues a rework circle during your turn. If you do not have any face-up cards in your damage zone, this unit gets power +5k. So basically an 80k attacker, which helps you to make better numbers. It's nothing really special, it's just there for numbers. Now if we go back to the set, we got another duo of grade 1s, which one of them is Hanebami Toushirou, and Hanebami Toushirou has the ability, although when the unit is placed on the rework circle from your hand, cost +1, choose a Namazuo Toushirou from your drop and call to an open rework circle. Now, before we're going to talk about this skill, let's take a look at Namazuo Toushirou, as they are basically the exact same card, but then the opposite of each other. Because Namazuo Toushirou has the ability, and yes, it's also a grade 1, although when the unit is placed on the rework circle from hand, cost +1, choose a Hanebami Toushirou from your drop and call to the open rework circle. So either you call one from hand and call the other from the drop zone, it doesn't matter which one you call from hand. It's a nice way to swarm the board, and depending on what type of deck you play, this can be very useful if you don't really rely on counterblast all that much, but you are dependent on swarming the board. You're gonna see this in a moment where this might come up. But in overall value, it's kind of whatever, as they're just 8k grade 1s that can get another 8k grade 1 to the field. So yeah, it's limited to the amount of value you're gonna get from it. But it does synergize a bit with the right deck, because you can discard the other card if you know you have the other one in hand, so you can then set up for value later down the line. So there are some plays to be had here. Now we have 2 more cards before we're gonna dive into the right lines themselves, and these 2 cards does interact with the right line that was revealed today, which because they all belong to the Kotetsu archetype, or at least to the Kotetsu name. As we first have a grade 1, which is a supporter for this right line, which is Urashima Kotetsu. And Urashima Kotetsu has the ability continues a rework circle. If you have another unit in the same column as this unit gets power +5k. Also active during your opponent's turn. So it's basically a 10k booster, but it's on a 5k body, which is kind of weird, but it's probably very easy to fulfill this condition. Just slam it behind your Vanguard and it will always be a 10k booster. Like, it's alright. It's useful because of the application it's gonna have with the right deck, at least useful to a little bit extent. Now the second card that we have besides the right line is Nagasone Kotetsu, and Nagasone Kotetsu has the ability to continue a rework circle. If you have another unit with Kotetsu in its card name, this unit gets power plus 5k. Also active during your opponent's turn. Again, power that stays on the board for both players, so it's harder for your opponent to remove if they do not have removal skills. The only issue that I have with this card is that the 9k base, so that means it doesn't really make good magic numbers with most columns or most attacks, which makes it a little bit awkward. So yeah, take it as you want, if you're gonna use this card or if it's useful for your skills. Let's take a look at one of the two right lines, and the first one that we're going to take a look at is of course the Hachisuke right line. And the starter of that is of course Hachisuka Kotetsu. And Hachisuka Kotetsu is just a generic starter, so we can immediately move on to the grade 1. Now, the grade 1 is of course Hachisuka Kotetsu Sentou. And this one has the ability: act on Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost Soul Blast 1, and reveal 2 cards from your right deck with Hachisuka Kotetsu in their card names. Choose a card from your drop and put it into your hand. Now this is an interesting skill because the condition is just to reveal your right deck, as the grade 2 and the grade 3 are going to be Hachisuka Kotetsu if you're playing this right line, so it's a non-condition. Now, getting a card from drop zone sounds really weird because in the early game you don't really have anything in the drop zone. Yes, you can Soul Blast your starter and you can then grab the starter from your drop and add it to your hand, but what's the point of that? It's just a starter and 5k shield. But the interesting thing here is that you basically are negating your discard cost for the right deck, because you can just discard whatever card from your hand and then with the skill immediately get it back to your hand. So you don't really have the hard choice of needing to discard potentially a combo piece just to get to your right line. So it's a nice addition to combat that potential issue that we've seen with the introduction of the right line, which is a nice gimmick to have. But then of course this also has the generic ability, continues on rearguard circle. During your turn, this unit gets power plus 2k. So again, a 10k booster. Now if we go to the grade 2, we see Hachisuka Kotetsu Toku, and this one has the ability, although when this unit is placed on a Vanguard circle, by riding from Hachisuka Kotetsu Sentou, aka the grade 1, cost counterblast 1, search your deck for up to 1 Urashima Kotetsu, call to the rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. So this is basically the searcher for the grade 1 that becomes a 10k booster or 10k attacker onto the field, which, yeah, this is the reason why the grade 1 is kind of useful, because you now have a skill that directly searches it out, and you can just slam it behind the Vanguard, and you have a 20k column on turn 2, which is nice for early aggression. And of course, the secondary effect of this unit is continues a rearguard circle during your turn, this unit gets power plus 2k, so 12k, not really anything special, but it's there. Now, as for the grade 3, the big payout of this right line, and yes, it's a bit underwhelming, but there might be some potential here. We have Hachisuka Kotetsu Kiwame, and this unit has the ability, continues on Vanguard Circle. If you have 5 rearguards, so a full board, all of your front row rearguards get power plus 5k, and all of your back row rearguards get boost, active on opponent's turn 2. So again, we get passive power to the board that then stays during our opponent's turn. So if we combine this with the grade 1 and the grade 2 we already saw, we can have beefy units even during our opponent's turn. So it's harder to get rid of our field, which we need to have, because if one unit gets removed and we have only 4 rearguards, the entire skill is shut off and we lose the value of this card. Now, giving all your units boost is nice because now we can put all the strong grade 2s and grade 3s in the back, and we don't really rely on a lot of grade 1s to get good numbers. And the fact that we can search out a booster in the early game means that we can get away with running less grade 1s, because yes, we can get this booster in the early game where it matters, and then during our grade 3 turn we can just slam down all our grade 2s and grade 3s onto the board. And because grade 2s and grade 1s have the same shield value, you don't really lose out on shield value in the process. And if you must, you can still intercept with the grade 2s if you need to. But don't forget, there are some applications here, because we have the grade 1s that can swarm the board, so they allow you to combat the issue if you cannot flood the board, and you don't really use counterblast with this ability, so you can use the counterblast for those grade 1s. But as soon as the front row get passive power, we can utilize the Restender triple R grade 2, because now it attacked twice with extra power. But we also have the grade 2 that can swap columns, and because the front row gets plus 5k power and it's passive, means that even if we swap those units, the new unit also gains the extra 5k power, so we can suddenly make a bit better numbers to also be a bit more aggressive. So there are some applications with this right line, but on first glance it looks to be very underwhelming. But I think there can be more potential here, especially with the fact that we have a solid 20k attack on the Vanguard spot on turn 2, at all times. It's somewhat similar to what we've seen with the Dragon Empire starter deck, where they can be a bit more aggressive on the early turns because they have consistent access to their pieces. But of course, this isn't the only ride line that we got for Touken Ranbu, as we also have a secondary ride line, which is very interesting, and this one has a lot of potential with the support we already saw for Touken Ranbu, as we're entering the Yamanbagiri Kunihiro ride line. And of course, that ride line starts with the starter, which is of course Yamanbagiri Kunihiro, and this has just a generic starter effect, so we can immediately move on to the grade 1, which is Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Sentou. And this one has the ability, although when this unit is rode upon by Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Toku, cost counterblast 1, draw a card. So we've seen this before. It's basically the Oracle Think Tank ride line, the Sorcerer's ride line ability for the grade 1. It's fine, it's not amazing, but at least we have something here. And then also, of course, it has the effect, continues a regular circle during your turn, this unit gets power plus 2k. Now, if we go to the grade 2, and this is where things start to get really interesting, we have Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Toku, and this unit has the ability, although when this unit is rode upon by Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Kiwame, cost discard 1, search your deck for up to 1 Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Kiwame, review it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. So if we rode the grade 3 on top of this grade 2, we can search for the grade 3. We can search our Persona ride. So this ride line has 100% access to at least one Persona ride turn. And we've seen a lot of skills for Touken Ranbu that activate if we're Persona Road this turn. So this is the ride line archetype that can enable all those cards to suddenly be a lot more powerful, because you will always get at least one turn of your Persona ride. And then of course we have the on-hitter that can also give us Persona ride, so we can get more value. And we have the counter charger now available to us, because we can just run it as we can Persona ride whenever we want. So this is a potential very powerful archetype, just by the sheer fact that suddenly all of those powerful cards are now going to be active a lot more consistently. And on top of that, we also have the skill continues a regular circle during a turn, this unit gets power plus 2k. Not really important here. But let's take a look at the grade 3 and see what the big payout is. So the grade 3 of this ride line is Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Kiwame, and this one has the ability continues on Vanguard circle. If your Persona rode this turn, this unit gets critical plus 1. So automatically an extra critical of your Persona ride. It's a nice extra free addition to it, because now we swing for 23 and double critical, and that is disregarding a potential booster behind it. So that's pretty nice, but not really a big payout enough to make things warrant as a good solid ride line or a boss unit. That's where the secondary effect comes in, and where we can suddenly see a bit more options. As we have Autumn Vanguard Circle, this cost may be paid with Soul Blast 1 Yamanbagiri Kunihiro Kiwame, aka a Persona Blast. When this unit attacks, cost Counter Blast 1, draw a card, choose up to one card from your hand, and call to an open rearguard circle. So this allows us to swarm the board and always be able to at least attack for 3 times. Now, because you need to call to an open rearguard circle, you cannot inherently multi-attack, because if you fill the board, there is no open rearguard circle to actually do something. But if I remember correctly, the Persona Ride Searcher is an unhit skill that then retires itself. So if you use that card, you open up a slot, and then you can suddenly call something to it, and now you can potentially multi-attack. Yes, you need to jump through some hoops to actually do it, but there are options to enable this. And of course, if you don't really want to use this as a multi-attack, this is still a way to surprise your opponent with the plays that you want to make. So this ride line is very interesting with the fact that we have consistent access to the Persona Ride, and that with the inherent synergy with all those Touken Ranbu Persona Ride skills, gives this ride line probably the biggest explosive power that we've seen so far. But we have to wait and see till more support if this is going to be the strongest ride line, or we're going to see some very interesting synergies with the other ride lines, as we still got a couple of cards to be revealed for Touken Ranbu. And that also wraps up today's Cardfight update. Yes, it was a Touken Ranbu episode, but I wanted to get all these cards out of the way right now, as tomorrow we're going to get another biannual product live stream. So we're going to see a lot of new information for the upcoming months for Bushiroad, for Vanguard, what we're going to get, what type of sets, what type of support, what they're planning, what their focus is. So we're gonna have a lot more exciting non-Touken Ranbu stuff to talk about tomorrow, and probably at the end of this week I want to focus on the new reveals for set 2, because we saw some more set 2 cards but I want to give them their own spotlight when we're gonna talk about those synergies and the potential upgrades to the old archetypes from set 1 and the starter decks themselves. But with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new guidelines for Touken Ranbu, these new supports. Do you think Touken Ranbu now finally has actually some validity to it? Or do you still think that a lot of these cards and the playstyles is too gimmicky and too underpowered to actually do anything at all at the current environment? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/FangTheInsider. You guys are amazing. If you want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/FangTheInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap. See you guys in the next one!